I'm Lauren Denyer and I'm an educator at WSET School London. Today I'm going to be talking about 5 key options in red wine making. The 5 options that we're going to be looking at are pre-fermentation, options for fermentation, options for post-fermentation, blending options and maturation options. So we'll start chronologically and we'll start with pre-fermentation options. So one of the key options when it comes to pre-fermentation will be pre-fermentation extraction. So this is a technique that it is used where you keep the skin and the juice in contact, and this would be at a cool temperature. So we'd want it at a cool temperature so fermentation doesn't take place. So this happens before the fermentation. By doing this and using this technique, you can extract more flavour and colour. You're not going to extract tannins at this point. So this is really good for wines where you don't want to extract much in the way of tannin, but you do want to emphasise colour and flavour in the wine. Following a pre-fermentation extraction, we go into fermentation. Now for fermentation, there are many options here within this process. For red wine, the key thing is temperature. So one of the things we need to consider is that the temperature can't be too low and it can't be too high. So the temperature is 20 to 32 degrees, and that's Celsius. This is because we want to extract now, and these warmer temperatures, we want to extract colour, flavour and tannins at this point. The more tannins that you want to extract, the higher the temperature that we would like. So we don't want to go above 35 degrees though, because at that point we kill the yeast. So we've got temperature as an option. We've also got vessels as an option. So we can be thinking about what kind of vessel you might want to use for the fermentation to take place in. Stainless steel is a very common option. It's very easy to temperature control and clean and to move the grapes around. Oak will have some influence on the flavours and the aromas of the wine. We'll talk about that a little bit later for maturation. And then putting in oak inserts, that can also help to influence the flavours and aromas of the wines. But usually you'll use an oak vessel for fermentation for smaller batches. Cap management techniques are really important because we want to, during the fermentation process, not only do we want the fermentation to take place, but we also want to extract colour and tannin and flavour from the wines. So the grapes or the grape skins will float to the top of the vessel in order to make sure that they integrate into the juices, and so we get that extraction. We've got a few options for cap management techniques. So we've got pumping over, punching down, rack and return and rotary fermenters. All of these things will help to achieve moving the grapes and the grape skins through and the juices and doing that extraction. So if you are pumping over, you're using a pump that's taking the wine or the fermenting wine from the bottle of the vessel and then pouring it over, and that's breaking the cap. Or if you are punching down, you're using sort of a metal disc or a plate and with a stick, and you're doing that manually, and that achieves the same thing. Pumping over is generally a little bit gentler. Rack and return is taking the wine out and then putting it back into the vessel, and then there are such a thing as rotary fermenters which sort of turn by themselves, therefore mixing the grape skins and the grapes with the fermenting wine. Another option for fermentation is the type of yeast you might use. This will also impact the flavours and the aromas of the wine. So you could use an ambient or a wild natural yeast, so that happens to be on the grapes or in the winery just naturally, or you could use a cultured yeast. A cultured yeast is a yeast that you can buy commercially. Now the difference between the two is ambient will probably give you slightly more sort of wild flavours and aromas, and also can be slightly less reliable because you are relying on its natural properties to do a fermentation. Cultured yeasts are designed specifically and are going to be reliable, but they could give you more uniform flavours and aromas. So post-fermentation operations, well, one of those, which is really important, is to continue keeping the skins in contact with the wine after the fermentation. So although we do extract colour, flavours and tannins during the fermentation process, there is the option to continue this, and it's actually very important for tannins. Further extraction when the fermentation is finished with the alcohol level, which if we're making a dry wine, it is going to be usually around sort of 12 to 14%. That level of alcohol will help to extract further tannin, and it actually creates smoother tannins during that process. This is particularly important for, again, wines that you want to age for a longer period of time. A following option would be maturation. So there's many different things that you can do for maturation. You can actually do no maturation whatsoever. The majority of wines out there on the market actually don't undergo much in the way of maturation. They're meant to be drunk when they're quite young. So you'll notice if you look at a bottle of wine, it will have a year on it, which is probably quite recent. However, there are wines where we do want to do some maturation. That could be medium or it could be long-term maturation. So we could be talking a few months, or in some cases we could be talking a few years. So that will be up to the producer, it will be up to the regulations of perhaps the protected designation of origin, and that will influence the style of the wine. So when we are maturing our wines, we've got further options of what we want to mature them in. Oak is the main maturation vessel that is used because it can impart flavours and aromas such as clove, cedar, vanilla, potentially coconut as well, depending on the species. The size of the oak barrel can also impact the wine, because the bigger the barrel is, the less impact it will actually have on the wine itself. So in places like Bordeaux and Burgundy, they tend to use quite small barrels because they want to, particularly in Bordeaux, they want to impact quite a lot of oak character. And whereas you might find in other parts of the world, they prefer to use bigger barrels and have less influence of that oak on the wine. The age of the barrel will also similarly have either more or less of an impact. So a newer oak barrel is going to give you much more of those obvious charred wood, oaky notes. So again, things like vanilla and clove. So that will be a barrel that's not been used before. When it's been used that first time, it's going to impact a lot of those characteristics. When it gets older, it will diminish. So second use, you might get a bit, third use, a touch, and then really you don't seem to get so much of that characteristic. However, an oak barrel does allow in oxygen, so you can get a slight oxidative character to wines that have been kept in barrel for a period of time. What that will do, that can help with softening the tannins, and it can also give sort of a more roundness to the wine and potentially give some characteristics, particularly with older wines, of a bit of dried fruit. So it can have an impact even when the age of the barrel is older. So when these barrels are made, they're made by coopers, and the coopers need to use fire to bend the staves and create the shape of the barrel, and so that it becomes watertight or liquid tight. So you can actually toast barrels at different levels. So you can have lightly toasted, medium toasted and heavily toasted barrels. And so the more toasted they are, the more impact they will have on the wines. If you don't want to spend all of that money on a barrel, because a French barrel, for example, a small French barrel around 225 litres or 228 litres will cost you around €1,000. So to get oaky notes in wines, for wines that are going to be less expensive on the market, you can use oak alternatives. So that could include things like oak chips and staves. They will be put into usually a stainless steel vessel, and they will impart characteristics. They can impart, again, the vanilla-y clove notes, but they won't have any oxidative impact on the wine. The final key option for red wine making that I'm going to talk about is blending. So all wine will be blended one way or another, and there's many reasons why you do that and many options and choices you can have for blending. So if you're making a wine with different grape varieties, of course, you're going to blend those varieties. So for example, somewhere like Bordeaux, you will be blending on the left bank, you'll be blending mostly Cabernet Sauvignon, but with some Merlot, and that will help to create balance in a wine. And I'll talk a little bit about the reasons for blending as well as the components for blending. So grape varieties are blending components. We can blend vintages. Now that doesn't tend to happen for more premium wines. You can get it for more entry-level wines, but it might be that you hold back wines from previous years, and then you blend those vintages together. We also blend press fractions. So when we make a red wine, after the fermentation, the free-run wine will be taken out of the fermentation vessel. So that's the first wine that comes out of that vessel. Then beyond that, the grapes and anything left in that vessel, the grape skins and things, will be pressed. And so we have press fractions from the press wine that we can therefore blend back into the free-run wine. So the more you press those, the press wine, the more colour and tannin you will get. So that can make a really good blending component if you want to add some colour and tannin to the free-run wine. We blend for, as I mentioned before, balance. So let's say you've got grape varieties with different acid levels. That would be a really good way to blend and create the acidity level that you want for your wine, or perhaps the alcohol level that you want for your wine. We blend for consistency. If you're a producer and you want to make a wine that you've got lots of people enjoy drinking, you want to make sure that every time you make it, it's going to taste relatively similar, so that people know what to expect. And of course you can blend for style and complexity. If you've got some of your wine in oak barrels and some not, you might blend those together to get some oak influence. And we blend for price as well. So it might be that you want to blend in maybe some wine that is less expensive to bring down the price, or maybe you are blending together lots of really high quality grapes together, and that is going to give you a more expensive wine. So yeah, lots of reasons why we blend. So balance, consistency, style, complexity and price are the main ones. So here is a short written answer question on the topic of red wine making options, and this one is about pre-fermentation extraction. So the question is, describe pre-fermentation extraction and explain why it might be used. So we're going to think about which the command verbs are here. So for this question, we'd highlight describe as one of the command verbs and explain as the other command verb. So what we want to do is we want to describe what it is and then say why it might be used. So you're going to need to use vocabulary to do an explanation. This has 4 marks, this question, so you don't need to give a huge amount of detail, but we do need to look at how we would link what it is and why it's used. So for example, pre-fermentation extraction is when the grape juice and the skins are left in contact at a low temperature before the start of fermentation. So that is our describing what pre-fermentation extraction is. And so why it might be used, so the explanation part, well, the purpose of this is to extract colour and flavour from the grape skins without extracting tannin, because the tannin is more soluble in alcohol. So we do a pre-fermentation extraction, describe what that is, because we want to extract colour and flavour and not tannins. Thanks for watching.